This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good morning, everybody. We are here today at the hearing to receive comments and testimony concerning the proposed rule amendments that concern adoption or allowance of the practical applications of real estate appraisal program to satisfy experience requirements for state licensed and state certified residential appraisers. The board will not be taking questions or answering questions today. This hearing is specifically for you members of the public to provide your opinions, testimony, and comments on the proposed rule changes. Participants wishing to provide oral testimony today must identify yourselves by name when called upon to do so, and testimony is going to be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes in the interest of time. As I said before, the board will not respond to questions at this time. And at the conclusion of this meeting, the comment period for the proposed rule amendments will end unless the board elects to reopen or extend the comment period at some later date here. So we can go ahead and get started. Well, I guess first of all, to state staff in attendance today, we have myself, Chad Cook. We have Administrative Assistant Stephanie Perkins. And I believe we have a couple of board members on with us today, Kathy Putnat and Owen Bartels, as well as I believe potentially Julie DeGlow is in the meeting today. But again, board members will not be taking questions today. This is specifically for you folks to provide your opinions, testimony, and comments on the proposed rule change. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and open the floor to public testimony. Anybody wishing to provide oral testimony, go ahead and raise your hand real quick. Or if that doesn't work, and I see Margaret. Okay, go ahead, and I'm going to unmute you, Margaret, here. It looks like I had to send you an unmute request. Sorry about that. Okay, Margaret, go ahead. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Margaret Nelson Quinn, SRA. I am a certified general appraiser, and I'd like to compartmentalize my comments into three sections. The first being my experience as to achieve my residential license. The second, my experience to achieve my general license. And then third, my experience as a supervisor. When I first got started to achieve my license as a residential appraiser, I had to travel 2 hours just to get to my supervisors, and I was the last on their list. They both had several assistants, and that's why I ended up having 2 supervisors, because the getting work was challenging, and because they had multiple assistants, I didn't have access to them for questions, for assistance, for mentoring. And for me, that was really problematic. I came out of that system with my experience hours, not really knowing what I was doing. And I depended a lot on my clients and the chief appraisers of my clients to kind of clear up questions that I had. And one of the things that I think is valuable about the PREA program is that it provides prescribed education, prescribed experience, so that you don't end up having holes in your education or experience, much like I did. As an assistant to a general appraiser to get my general hours, because I already had my residential license at the time, unbeknownst to me, I was so busy trying to get my hours and get my experience and put in the necessary time that it didn't occur to me that the person who was supervising me was actually using my residential license to broaden their scope of the market. And when I turned in my hours, the first time, I essentially learned at that time that much of the work that I had done on commercial jobs, I was doing the residential component, and then somebody else was doing the commercial component, that didn't qualify. And as a as a general licensee assistant, having something like Perea would make sure that I had the education and the knowledge to walk into a general office and a general appraisal office and understand what I needed to know and what I would be applying to my experience hours, as opposed to kind of not knowing until I turned things in that much of my work was not going to qualify. As an appraiser supervisor, I am it's really a labor of love. Um, you have to lower your fees to be able to get enough volume. Um, in this environment, fewer and fewer banks are allowing the use of assistants to work on appraisals. And so navigating what clients will allow an assistant to work on an assignment and lowering your fees, both parties, both the supervisor and the assistant, are really getting a tough deal, because if I'm going to have an assistant, I always had at least 2 assistants to be able to cover my costs, because I'm buying data, I'm buying software, insurance, and in the end, I'm covering the cost of driving or inspections, and because it just doesn't make sense to pay an assistant very little to do that kind of work. And with a program like Perea, if somebody had trained through Perea, I would likely take them on in a heartbeat to either as an assistant to get them up and running while they were trying to open an appraisal business, or even as an employee, because I know that their education is thorough and doesn't have the holes that it might have if someone like the people who trained me to be a residential appraiser had trained an assistant. And so I encourage the board to accept Perea. It may not be perfect, but I think that we in Oregon have a history of doing the best that we can do and making sure that we are continuing to get better as we move along. And so that's my testimony. Thanks for allowing me to do this.
Thanks very much, Margaret. Thank you for your
Yes,
testimony.
sure.
All right, and next up we have, in fact, just one quick second, folks, here. I believe when I started the meeting here, I didn't state the time or the date. The time was, at the time the meeting was convened, 9:02 a.m., and the date today is September 9th, 2024. Now, next up, I believe we have Max. Go ahead and, in fact, let's see, unmute. There we go. All right, Max, go ahead and identify yourself.
Max Smith. I was originally licensed L450, and now I'm CR391. Almost 35 years. I started at the SNL bailout, 89 or something like that. And as I was ramping up, changing professions. So, I started from the beginning. I worked at Jim Land's office, 25 people on staff, and John Concert's 25 people on staff. Pretty sure those are the 2 largest appraisal companies we've had in the state since I've been an appraiser. So really experienced. I'm a bank type appraiser, meaning banks, direct banks employ me. So no AMC stuff, less rant. I don't want it to be a rant, but let's be honest. This leverage of AMCs, what we've watched for staff appraisers started coming in for AMCs was okay. And so literally, it's kind of, I see it similar to the country. So let's be honest, I don't really know where this is going to end up at, but it kind of looks like this program is going to allow appraisers to become people to become appraisers. We need more, but we don't need dorks, because we already have too many that don't know their job. Let's be honest with it. So we want to be leading. So I don't mind if you add this, but don't make it so they can be licensed, because what just happened is going to get worse and it's going to turn into a terrible mess. So the MCs have leveraged we have no work. I've done 2 appraisals in the last 2 years. I'm not working for half price, period. I'm not. And how many people have left the profession? I know of a pile, because we refused to work for $400. The dorks, they're licensed. It shouldn't even be licensed, probably. I have a handful of stuff. I used to do review work occasionally. It's mostly all terrible. It is, everybody knows it's no good, and they just need another appraiser to say, hey, we can't loan on this appraisal. So here's the ugly part of it is they just leveraged not half, but they leveraged a bunch of appraisers out of the field. They cleared the field so they can take it over with a bunch of people. Will they be better than our current appraisals? I would dare the ACLB to do a sampling. I can add to it. They don't know their job. I see a certified residential appraiser doing something. Yeah, he can do a $2 million property. Uh, Let me go and roll back. For the banks, I've mostly been for about 10 years doing piles of complex stuff most appraisers won't even take on because I know how to come up with a solution that makes sense. Like Detroit burned down, you have no comps. They give it to me because they know, given enough time, I will solve it and it'll be badass. It will be proven to that bank. I'm working directly for banks. They want to fund on it. So now you're changing the workforce. How are they going to be able to trust loaning on these appraisals? And then if you get into a mess like that, how are you going to rein it back in? It's a mess. It's like the country. It's on a slide and you're not even going to get it reined back in. So my suggestion would be add everything that can make better appraisers, but let's not take away anything that we know. So imagine if they got license online and they haven't even inspected a property. If none of us could achieve it in 1 year, why do we think the people in today's world would be able to grasp it better than we could when we were learning? Inspections, all this stuff. I mean, you don't know your job in a year. You don't know your job in 2 years. Let's admit it. This is a hard, difficult job, and you need somebody hanging your hat. And the other problem is the offices. There was never a lot of large offices, but generally they came together 2 or 3 people because they gave them feeling of safety. We know that few appraisers want you walking into their office looking at their files. Why is that? Because they're not confident. They don't know how bad they really are. Well, the one I still haven't turned in, I feel like I've taken a couple of appraiser licenses over the years because you got to get rid of them. Here's another one. I don't know his age or anything, but certified residential. The loan didn't happen, so another lender ended up with it, and they engaged me. I came in over $500,000 more than he did. His defined subject neighborhood for this 12 or 15 acre $1 million home with outbuildings and stuff that is about 10 miles from Jervis, and his defined neighborhood was urban Jervis. Oh boy, my
Max,
neighbor.
Max,
Yeah,
Max, I'm
yeah.
going to jump in here. You've got about 45 seconds left on your testimony if you want to connect
Let's
that back in Korea.
let's make this profession better in Oregon. The heck with the rest of the country. I don't know what really the things are, but let's make our state better and let's admit to the flaws we already have. And will that fix it? I'm suggesting no. Let's work together for a better way to make the appraisers so they can reach out and get some help that they need, that we all know they need. They're afraid and they need a better deal, but this may help it, but let's not let go of what we know does work, please. That's all.
Thank you very much, Max, for your testimony. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
And I appreciate you guys too. And the other thing too, Mondays, I look at Monday and Friday the same. Monday is a mess. Why start out the week in a mess that you didn't even have a chance to? Maybe I need to talk to you today before a meeting. And Friday is Friday. So I think important meetings should be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Just a helpful suggestion on that. And hey, we always like you guys, and you guys are usually great to work with. So yeah, there's that. So I think we all understand as appraisers what we're looking at. So let's hope sound minds prevails. Okay. Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Max. All right. Is there anybody else that wishes to provide verbal testimony today? If you're having trouble with the raise hand function, feel free to unmute yourself real briefly. I can see the mute screens here. All right, well, it appears we don't have anybody else wishing to provide verbal oral testimony here today. Let's see, we have received, I believe, Stephanie, was it 2 additional written comments? Go ahead and unmute.
It was just one additional along with Margaret's submission.
Got it. Okay. All right. And those will be passed on to the board for those of you attending, as will this recording and minutes from this hearing as well. So everybody's comments will definitely make it to the board here. One last time, anybody else that wishes to provide any oral testimony? And I see, okay, you're listed as JKE Office. Feel free to speak and please identify yourself first and last name. Was that a mistake? JKE Office, did you not intend to provide testimony? Okay, hearing no response, folks, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll go ahead and close the hearing for public comment on the proposed amendments to Oregon Administrative Rule for the Practical Applications of Real Estate Appraisal Program. And let's see, the time now is 9:19 a.m. and the hearing is now officially adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.